All right, so we're checking out the BETAFPV LiteRadio 2 simulator controller. It's called the LiteRadio 2 Sim. Comes in a bunch of different colors here. It's the red one, and you can see the different other colors here on the bottom. There's like a blue, like a teal, light blue, green, pink, red, and I guess this is sort of a gray color. And there's no radio controller stuff in here, and no battery. So it's basically, if you're familiar with the LiteRadio 2, it's their entry-level radio that has like Express LRS or FreeSky in there, and they basically took all those guts out, and all you have is basically a joystick controller that you're going to connect up to your PC or Mac or Android or iPhone, and you can use some software simulator to learn how to fly FPV in the software. So in terms of evaluating this as a controller, it's really no different than the LiteRadio 2. I do have reviews on the LiteRadio 2 from many years ago. This has been around for a while, this form factor. It's a nice gamepad style, Game Boy style controller. And, if you're looking for something like this, like an Xbox style controller, this has been around for a while. They're just using the same plastic molds, the same gimbals, and the same switches. They just now remove the battery and the radio control components. And so basically the only way you can communicate with the PC is via the USB-C port here on top. They do include a USB-C to USB-A cable to connect to your computer, and you do get a manual. It does support a number of different modes. There's the standard joystick mode, which is going to be working for most of the simulators out there, and that's the joystick mode. And on my computer, it just shows up as BETAFPV joystick, nothing special, and then it just shows some of the simulators that it will work with. And then there's a couple of other modes, Xbox mode and dongle mode, for these sort of niche or unique simulators, if you want to use those. And it does have some instructions on how to get into those modes. You basically use some stick commands here before you plug it in to use those other modes, the dongle mode and the Xbox mode. If you just plug it in without doing anything, which is what most of your guys are going to do, you don't mess around with the sticks, and you'll just automatically default to the joystick mode. Now, there is ways to upgrade the firmware supposedly on this. I guess you can connect it to the BETAFPV configurator. Not sure if they'll ever do that for this, because obviously it's basically a dumb control. There's no RC stuff in here, no transmitter stuff, so I'm not sure what the relevance of that is. But in terms of how it felt, in terms of what I use it for, I downloaded this simulator called Tiny Whip Go. When I got it, it was free. I think it still might be free, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure there's like a free version you can get for that one for your PC. That one works pretty well. Just plugged it in. I did have to calibrate the sticks in the simulator. You have to do that for all the simulators. Pretty much every time you plug in the joystick controllers, that's kind of par for the course. It doesn't remember that, but once you calibrate the sticks and set the switches and everything, it'll remember everything for that session, and you should be good to go. But yeah, in terms of the way this feels, it's exactly the same. In fact, I think these gimbals are an updated version, because when I first reviewed the original LiteRadio 2, the original gimbals weren't very good, and then they made a Generation 2 gimbal that was a lot better. I think these are the Generation 2 gimbals, but as far as I can tell, there's no difference. They feel the same spring, in terms of the way they feel and the way they look, pretty much the same as those Generation 2 gimbals. Obviously, this is not a super high price product. It's gonna be like $20, I think, for this thing. So, for the amount of components you get in here, for which you're going to be getting back, I'd say it's a fair price. And if you're, looking for something to get into FPV, you want to learn how to fly without crashing and breaking something first, then this is a very low-cost way to go. Of course, the simulators, in the end, don't feel 100% the same as flying for real. I think it's more interesting. Like, I can go from where I learned where I didn't have any simulators. I learned actually crashing and breaking stuff. And then going back and flying simulators, I realized, oh yeah, this doesn't really feel the same, but I can pick it up pretty quickly in terms of like, oh, okay, this is how the physics are behaving. So I'm able to pick it up pretty quickly, although from a total beginner's perspective, it could be a different experience. But at the end of the day, it ultimately gets you in basically flying, sort of the feel for how the sticks will work and how the drone will react in the air to your stick movements. And ultimately, that's what you want to do. You want to learn how that's going to work for you. And then when you sort of master how to fly in the simulator, then you can go and get your first drone. I would recommend something like a tiny wheel, maybe like the BETAFPV, the Air 65 would be a really good starter. The Air 75, something like that would be a really good starter drone. And then, if you crash that, in the grass, whatever, most of the time you're going to be fine and not really break anything. So I would ultimately start off with a simulator like this and move on to like some sort of a tiny whoop. And then at that point, you can sort of figure out what's going to be best for you, because you've probably flown quite a bit at that point. But in terms of my experience in this simulator and this controller, totally exactly the same as the LiteRadio 2 that I reviewed a while back. And I'll link that in the description if you want that review for how I felt about the switches and the gimbals, all exactly the same. And then the controller itself here, is going to be, I think, is totally fine for simulator use. And I think you'd be, as a beginner, I think you'd be totally fine with that. With that being said, I'll put a link in the description for this if you guys want to check it out. And, for those of you regular viewers that are already experienced pilots, if you are seeing a friend or someone that wants to get into the hobby, this is a good way to go, and it doesn't really cost a lot of money. That'll do it for this video. Talk to you guys in the next one.